Please, someone help me." Her voice was barely above a whisper, swallowed up by the noise of the parking lot. Lorene Adkins almost didn't hear it. She was 63 years old, thick in the waist, moving slow because her left knee had been grinding like gravel for 2 years, and she couldn't afford the surgery. She had 3 bags of groceries in her hands, and a 4th tucked under her arm, and she was 40 feet from her car, and she was late. Her grandson Caleb had a piano recital at 6. It was 5:12. She'd been on her feet since 7 a.m. at the laundromat, where she worked folding other people's clothes. She heard it again. "Please." She stopped. The sound came from the gap between 2 parked trucks near the far edge of the lot. A woman, sitting on the ground, back against the tire of a blue pickup, one hand pressed flat against her chest. Lorene set her bags down right there in the middle of the parking lot and walked over. "What happened? What's wrong?" The woman looked up. 70s, silver hair, short and neat. A cream-colored blazer's now dirty at the shoulder from the asphalt. She was breathing in short pulls, like each one cost something. "My heart. I think it's my heart. I have medication, but my purse." She started to push herself up. "I dropped it when I fell." Lorene was already looking. The purse was 6 feet away, half under the truck. She got down on one knee, bad knee, didn't think about it, reached under, and pulled it out, handed it over. The woman's hands were trembling. She couldn't get the clasp. "Let me." Lorene opened it, found the pill bottle almost immediately. The kind with the orange cap, the kind that sits right at the top because it's used often. Nitroglycerin. She'd seen her late husband Harold take these for 7 years. "Under your tongue, don't swallow it." The woman nodded, took it, closed her eyes. Lorene sat down on the asphalt next to her, right there between 2 parked trucks. Grocery bags back there in the middle of the lane. Anyone could have driven through them. She put her hand on the woman's back, just rested it there, and waited. Around them, the parking lot moved. A man walked past the end of the row, with a cart full of bags, and glanced over and kept going. A woman in yoga pants looked at her phone, while her car beeped unlocked. A teenager cut through on a skateboard, swerved around Lorene's grocery bags without stopping. Nobody asked. Nobody stopped. Lorene stayed. She had missed harder things than a piano recital. She would miss this one too. But before that afternoon, before the parking lot, before any of this, let me tell you who Lorene Adkins was. She was born in Decatur, Illinois, youngest of 4, raised by a mother who cleaned houses and a father who drove a school bus, and died of a stroke at 51. Lorene had wanted to be a nurse. She had the grades. She had the drive. She did 1 year of community college before her mother's health collapsed, and she came home to take care of her. She never went back. She married at 26. Harold Adkins, a sheet metal worker, gentleman, funny in the way quiet people are funny, slow and unexpected and true. They had 1 daughter, Vera. They were not rich, but they were steady. Harold died 11 years ago, a Tuesday morning in February, sitting in his chair, coffee on the armrest. Heart. The same thing that was taking him for years, and they knew it, and they had prepared, and it still felt like the floor dropped out. Lorene sold the house, moved into a 2-bedroom apartment. Vera lived 40 minutes away with her husband and their son Caleb, who was 8 now, who loved planets and piano, and whose last name was Park, because Vera had married a Korean-American man named David Park, and Lorene loved them all, and she was fine. She said she was fine. Most mornings she got up at 6. Made coffee in a pot she'd owned since 1987. Fed the cat, a gray one, named Biscuit she'd found in the parking lot of this same Kroger 3 years ago. Drove to the laundromat on Meridian Street, where she had worked for 6 years folding, sorting, operating the big commercial machines. She wore white New Balance sneakers that hurt her feet and an apron that smelled permanently of fabric softener. Her manager, a 29-year-old named Brett, who meant well but not enough, had given her the opening shift every day for the past 4 months. 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. It was better for his scheduling, he said. Lorene said okay because she needed the job, and because she had gotten used to saying okay. She made $14.20 an hour. She had $100 in her checking account, $340 in savings that she did not touch because that was for emergencies, and a credit card with a $200 limit that was currently at $187. She did not complain about any of this to Vera. Vera had enough going on. David had taken a pay cut at his company when they restructured. Caleb needed new glasses. The apartment building where they lived was raising rent again. Lorene did not complain. She asked about Caleb's recitals and sent birthday cards on time and kept her apartment tidy and told herself she was fine. On the day this story begins, Lorene had worked her shift, stopped at Kroger for the week's groceries. She had $62 in a list and spent $58.43 on bread and milk and rice and chicken thighs and a half-price bunch of bananas that were going brown and a generic brand cereal Caleb liked because Vera had mentioned he was staying over Friday. She had $3.57 left. She was going to make it work. She always made it work. And then she heard pleas from between two parked trucks, and she put her bags down, and she stopped. That is who she was before the parking lot. That is why she stopped. The woman's color improved within a few minutes. The trembling slowed. She opened her eyes. Better, she said. Thank you. Her voice was steadier now, still careful but steady. You sure? Lorene was watching her face. She'd watched Harold's face for years the same way. I'm certain. The woman took a breath. These episodes pass. I shouldn't have been walking so fast. The woman looked at her. My name is Vivienne Kearns. Lorene. She shook her hand. Can you stand? Do you want to try? In a moment. Vivienne looked around, and then at Lorene's grocery bags sitting unattended in the lane. Are those yours? I'll get them. You left them to help me. It wasn't a question. Lorene didn't answer. There's no one else here, Vivienne said quietly. She was looking at the empty space around them, at the parking lot full of people who had seen and kept going. Lorene shrugged. People are busy. Vivienne looked at her for a moment, the kind of look that feels like someone is measuring something, but not in a rude way, more like someone verifying what they thought they already knew. Do you need me to call anyone? Lorene asked. Family, a doctor. My driver is circling the block. I'll call him. Your driver. Lorene said it simply. Not impressed, not sarcastic. Vivienne almost smiled. Yes, my driver. I know how that sounds. Lorene helped her to her feet, walked with her to the main entrance of the store, where it was shaded and there was a bench. Went back for her grocery bags. Came back. Stayed with Vivienne until a black Lincoln Town car pulled up to the curb and a man in a dark jacket got out and came to her quickly and looked at her the way people look at someone they are professionally responsible for keeping alive. You're sure you're okay, Lorene said. I am. Because you stopped. Vivienne held her hand for a moment. Both hands, actually. A firm grip, the kind that had shaken a lot of hands. Thank you, Lorene. Lorene went home. She was 22 minutes late for Caleb's recital. She slipped in the back of the church hall during the third performer and found Vera in the fourth row, who looked back at her and mouthed you okay. And Lorene nodded. Caleb played a song called River Song that he'd been practicing since September. His hands were careful on the keys. His tongue peeked out slightly at the hard part in the middle. When he finished, he looked up and found Lorene in the back, and his face did something complicated and happy. Lorene had a carton of chicken thighs in a grocery bag at her feet. She was fine. That night, after Vera drove home, after Lorene had put away the groceries and fed Biscuit, and taken 2 ibuprofen for her knee, she sat in Harold's old chair, the one she'd kept from the house, and thought about the woman in the parking lot. Vivienne Kearns, the blazer, the driver circling the block, a woman like that, lying on the ground between 2 trucks because her heart had stuttered and no one helped. Lorene thought, the world is strange. Then she watched half of a home renovation show, fell asleep in the chair, and didn't think about it again. She forgot about the whole thing within a week. That was a Thursday. On Saturday morning, the doorbell rang. Lorene was still in her robe, coffee in hand, Biscuit trying to climb her leg. She looked through the peephole. A woman she didn't recognize. Late 30s, professional, dark coat. Behind her, a Lincoln Town car at the curb. Lorene opened the door. The woman said, Ms. Adkins? My name is Carol Stearns. I work for Vivian Kearns. Mrs. Kearns would like to speak with you if you have time this morning. She's asked me to bring you to her home. Lorene looked at the car, looked at Carol. Is she okay? She's very well. This is... Carol paused, choosing words. This is not urgent. Mrs. Kearns simply wanted to thank you. In person. She said you left rather quickly before she could. Lorene looked down at her robe. Give me 10 minutes. She put on her good slacks, the ones she kept for church and Caleb's school events. A blue blouse, her white sneakers. She left food for Biscuit, locked the door, got in the back of the Lincoln. The neighborhood changed on the way. Lorene watched it out the window. Storefronts gave way to wider streets, which gave way to a part of the city she'd driven past but never into. The yards got bigger. The fences got older, which in this neighborhood meant more expensive. The Lincoln turned onto a private drive, stone columns on either side, a gate. Beyond it, a house that was not what Lorene expected. Not a palace, not gleaming, more like a very old home that had been very well cared for. Brick and dark wood, deep-set windows. 4 acres, maybe more, sloping down toward a river that caught the November light. Lorene thought of Harold. He used to say some houses have been through things, same as people, they carry it in the walls. This was one of those houses. Carol led her inside. A hallway. Photographs on the walls. Lorene stopped at one of them without meaning to. A much younger Vivian, standing before a building under construction, hard hat slightly too big for her head, smiling at something off camera. Beneath the frame, a small plaque. Kearns Foundation, First Community Build, Memphis, 1988. Lorene had been 27 in 1988. Carol led her through a room lined with books, through a pair of glass doors, into a bright sunroom with wicker furniture and a view of the river. Vivienne was already standing. She looked different from the parking lot. Composed, upright, same silver hair, same careful eyes, but color in her face now, and a quality Lorene could only call settled. Like a person who knows exactly where they are, and exactly who they are, and has known for a long time. Lorene, she said, please sit down. They sat. Vivian looked at her the same way she had in the parking lot, that measuring, verifying look. I have been trying to figure out what to say to you, Vivian said. I've been doing that since Thursday. You didn't have to say anything. I know I didn't have to. Vivian's voice was mild but precise. There's very little I have to do anymore. That's why what I choose to do matters, and I chose this. She poured tea without asking, set a cup in front of Lorene. The medication was under the wrong tab, Vivian said, in my purse. I reorganize it every month, and I must have filed it incorrectly. I was reaching for my phone when I fell. I had been on the ground for 6 minutes before you found me. 6 minutes, Lorene said. I counted. I tried to count to keep my mind clear. 14 people walked past that row of trucks in 6 minutes. Not past me, they didn't see me, but past the end of the row, in a position where they could have seen me if they'd looked. Most didn't look. Lorene didn't say anything. You looked, Vivian said. I heard you. You heard me because you were paying attention. Vivian set down her cup. I have known a lot of people in my life. I have worked with a great many of them, and the ones who actually hear things, not just the loud things, the easy things, they're rarer than I can say. Lorene felt uncomfortable. She had never been good at being told she was something. You don't have to. I'm not flattering you. Vivian's voice sharpened slightly, the way a teacher's voice sharpens when a student is about to deflect. I'm telling you what I observed. There's a difference. Lorene was quiet. Carol told me you work at a laundromat on Meridian, Vivian continued. You've been there 6 years. Before that, you cared for your mother for 4 years. Before that, you left nursing school to do the same thing. You have 1 daughter, 1 grandson. Your husband passed 11 years ago. Carol is thorough. Lorene looked at her steadily. You had me looked into. I have resources, and I was curious. I wanted to know who you were before I asked you something. Lorene set down her tea. What are you asking me? Vivian folded her hands in her lap. She was silent for a moment, and Lorene had the sense this was not uncertainty. It was precision. Vivian Kearns did not speak until she knew what she meant to say. I started the Kearns Foundation in 1988 with my husband. She paused briefly at the word, husband. The kind of pause that means something. And we built workforce development centers in 4 cities over 20 years. After he died, I kept building. 12 centers now, all in underserved communities, all focused on practical trades and skills. Medical assistant training, culinary programs, HVAC, early childhood education. She paused. The director of our Memphis center retired in August. I have been looking for a replacement for 4 months. What I have found are people with excellent credentials and very little understanding of what the actual community needs. I have found administrators who say the right words in interviews and have no idea how to sit on a floor next to someone who is scared. She met Lorene's eyes. What I need is someone who knows what it looks like when a person needs help and stops anyway. The room was very quiet. Lorene said, I fold laundry for a living. You cared for a dying parent, Vivian said. You ran a household on a single income for 11 years. You left your own education to serve someone else. You know what it costs to keep something going when the math doesn't work. Those things are not nothing, Lorene. Those things are everything in this work. Lorene looked at the river through the window. I don't have a degree. The current director of our Chicago center has a master's in public policy. Vivian said it without heat. He's the worst listener I've ever employed. The woman who runs our Nashville center quit teaching elementary school after 18 years to join us. She has a teaching certificate and more insight into human need than anyone I've met. I hire for what I can't teach. Skills I can build, judgment I cannot. Lorene's hands were still in her lap. She thought about 6 a.m. She thought about fabric softener. She thought about the $340 she did not touch. She thought about Caleb's face when he found her in the back of the church hall, complicated and happy. What would the job be? She asked. Exactly. Vivienne described it plainly. Director of Program Operations at the Memphis site, overseeing 4 existing training programs, coordinating with instructors and community partners, managing intake and participant support. Staff of 7. Full salary, full benefits, a car allowance. The salary she named was more than 3 times what Lorene made at the laundromat. Lorene said, I don't know Memphis. You know Decatur. You know what it means to grow up somewhere with limited options. The participants in this program grew up in the same story, different city. Vivian paused. And for what it's worth, I'm not asking you to relocate immediately. We would do a 6-week orientation. You would meet the staff, observe the programs, ask every question you have. Then you decide. Lorene looked at her. You already decided. I have a strong opinion, Vivian said. You would still decide. Lorene breathed out slowly. I need to think about this. I need to talk to my daughter. Of course. Vivian stood, which meant Lorene stood. I would expect nothing less from someone with your judgment. She walked Lorene to the door herself. Carol was waiting at the car. Vivian held out her hand. Lorene shook it. You kept your hand on my back, Vivian said quietly. When we were sitting on the ground, you didn't say anything. You just stayed. She paused. I haven't had that in a long time. Someone just staying. Lorene didn't know what to do with that, so she just nodded. I hope to hear from you soon, Vivian said. Lorene got in the car. Carol drove her home. Lorene sat in the back and watched the neighborhoods change in reverse. Big houses, wide lawns, then narrower streets, then her block, her building, the Kroger parking lot, visible from the intersection. She went inside. Biscuit met her at the door. She sat in Harold's chair. She did not call Vera right away. She sat for a while, long enough for the afternoon light to move across the floor and the coffee to go cold, and Biscuit to climb into her lap and settle. She thought about Harold, who used to say, you always had more in you than this, Lo. He didn't mean it as criticism. He meant it the way you mean it when you love someone, and you can see what they cannot. She thought about her mother's bedroom on Greenfield Avenue. The smell of it. The way she'd learned to listen for changes in breathing from 2 rooms away. She thought about sitting on the asphalt next to a woman she did not know, holding her hand on a stranger's back while the parking lot moved around them. Then she called Vera. When she finished explaining, Vera was quiet for a long time. Mom, Vera finally said. Her voice was careful. This could be real. I know. Are you scared? Lorene looked at the window. The November light was gone now, just the reflection of the lamp. A little, she said. Good, Vera said. That means you know it matters. Lorene laughed. A real one, the kind that comes from somewhere low. She called Carol that evening, said she'd do the orientation, said she had questions, said she was not promising anything. But she said yes to the 6 weeks. She started on a Monday. The Memphis Center was in a converted textile building on the south side of the city. High ceilings, wide floors, the kind of bones that had held something hard and were now holding something better. The programs ran 6 days a week. Medical assistant certification, commercial kitchen training, HVAC fundamentals, and an early childhood development track that placed graduates into childcare facilities across the city. The staff was 7 people, as Vivienne had said. Their ages ranged from 24 to 61. Their backgrounds ranged from social work to the trades to one man, a soft-spoken instructor named Morris, who had worked HVAC for 28 years, and retired and come back because he didn't know what else to do with himself. Morris reminded Lorene of Harold. In the first week she said almost nothing. She sat in on intake sessions. She watched instructors teach. She ate lunch with participants in the common room and asked about where they were from and what they were trying to do. She took no notes during these conversations. She kept everything in her head, the way she had learned to, when her mother stopped being able to hold a schedule, and Lorene had to hold it for both of them. In the second week, she started asking questions. They were not the questions the previous director had asked. The previous director, she heard in passing from multiple staff members, had asked about outcomes data. Lorene asked about the woman in the HVAC program who came in every Monday, looking like she hadn't slept. She asked about the intake process. Why was there a 3-page form that required proof of residency when several of the people most likely to benefit from the program had unstable housing? She asked about the food. There's no food here, Lorene said to Morris at the end of week 2. People come for a 6-hour session with no meal break. Morris looked at her. I know, why hasn't anyone fixed that? Morris smiled. The kind of smile that means nobody asked. By week 4, Lorene had called a meeting. She'd never run a formal meeting in her life, but she had managed her mother's care team, which was 3 different doctors and a home health aide who didn't always show up, and she had learned that you make a list, you go through the list, you end on time, and you assign the next step to someone specific. The meeting lasted 45 minutes. By the end, they had a plan for a volunteer meal program to run 2 days a week, funded by a small budget reallocation that the previous director had left untouched for over a year. After the meeting, the youngest staff member, a 24-year-old named Tanisha, who ran the front desk and had the fast-moving eyes of someone who doesn't miss much, pulled Lorene aside. You're different from the last one, she said. Lorene said, how so? He had a lot of ideas, Tanisha said. You ask a lot of questions. Lorene thought that was about the best review she'd ever received. At the end of the 6 weeks, Vivienne called. What's your verdict? Vivienne asked. Lorene had her list ready. She'd been making it for 2 weeks. The intake form needs to be cut in half, she said. The meal program needs to be permanent, and it needs a budget line of its own. The HVAC instructor is excellent and is being paid below market rate, and you will lose him in the next 8 months if that isn't addressed. The early childhood track needs an additional clinical partner because the current one is stretched too thin, and the building's back exit needs a new light. Someone is going to trip on that step in the dark. There was a pause on the line. Then Vivienne said, when can you start? Lorene started in January. She gave her notice at the laundromat on a Tuesday. Brett looked surprised. Then he looked briefly sad. The way people look when they realize they should have paid more attention to something. Good luck, he said. She moved to Memphis in February. A 2-bedroom apartment, the first time she'd had 2 bedrooms to herself since the house. She set up one room as a guest room for Caleb, bought a set of twin sheets with rocket ships on them, and told Vera they'd better plan a visit soon. Biscuit adapted to the new apartment in approximately 20 minutes. Lorene's first full year as director, the Memphis Center enrolled 140 participants. 93 completed their programs. 71 were placed in jobs. Average starting hourly rate. More than she'd made folding laundry. More than most of them had ever made. The meal program fed 60 people a week. Morris got a raise. He stayed. Tanisha applied for and received a scholarship for a part-time social work degree. She kept working the front desk while she studied. Lorene rearranged her schedule to make it work. The intake form was cut to 1 page. The back exit got a new light. In October, Vivian visited. They walked the floor together. Vivian asked the same questions she always asked. Precise, probing, expecting honest answers. Lorene gave them. They disagreed about one curriculum decision, and Lorene held her ground and Vivian listened and ultimately said, "I'll defer to you on this one. You're the one in the room." That evening, after Vivienne had gone back to her hotel, Lorene sat in the empty common room. The chairs were stacked on the tables. The last of the day's light was coming through the high windows. She thought about the parking lot, about sitting on the asphalt next to a woman she did not know, about her grocery bags in the lane, about Caleb's face in the back of the church hall, about Harold's chair, about the $340 she had not touched for years, and how she had touched it last month, not for an emergency, but for a proper orthopedic consultation for her knee. An expense. A thing she'd done for herself. The surgery was scheduled for March. She sat there for a while, in the empty room, and it occurred to her that she'd spent a very long time making things work. Running the math. Saying okay because she needed the job and saying fine because Vera had enough going on and folding other people's clothes because the other options had closed. One by one, the way options do. The way they do for so many people who are doing everything right. And then one afternoon she heard please, and she put her bags down, and she stopped. She hadn't done it for anything. She hadn't known it would lead anywhere. She'd done it because it was the only right thing to do when someone was on the ground, between 2 parked trucks, and no one else was stopping. There's a certain kind of goodness that doesn't calculate. It doesn't ask whether there's time, or whether the math works, or whether anyone will notice. It just moves. And here's what I've come to believe. Watching people like Lorene Adkins, the world is not changed by the people who have the most to give. It's changed by the people who give when it costs them something to do it. That's the only kind of giving that actually means anything. We talk a lot about waiting until we're ready, until we have enough, until the timing is right. But the timing is almost never right. There will always be a recital. There will always be a bad knee and $3.57 left in bags in the lane. The people who matter are the ones who stop anyway. Lorene stopped, and a neighborhood in Memphis got a meal program, and a light over a backstep, and 71 people got jobs they couldn't have gotten before. All of that started with a woman on the ground, between 2 trucks and 1 person who looked. So I want to ask you something, and I mean it sincerely. When's the last time you looked? When's the last time you heard something and put your bags down? You don't have to be rich. You don't have to have a plan. You just have to stop. If this story stayed with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Drop a comment. I want to know, would you have stopped? Leave a like if you believe one person can change more than they'll ever know. And subscribe, because there are more stories like this one, and they deserve to be told. You don't have to have everything to give something. Remember that.